Have you ever wondered what it takes to go from, relative obscurity to becoming a household name on the internet? Often for all the wrong reasons.
It's a wild journey sometimes.
It really is. That line between passion and extreme controversy just gets so blurred. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the phenomenon known as that vegan teacher, Karen Deakmire.
Right.
Our mission here is to try and unpack her, remarkable and often pretty shocking journey from an elementary school teacher to, one of the internet's most controversial figures.
And we've got a lot to draw.
We do. Our sources are mainly extensive YouTube transcripts, really detailing her actions, her deeply held beliefs, and the absolutely explosive reactions she sparked across so many platforms.
And the big question we're tackling, I think, is how did her specific brand of vegan activism turn into something so polarizing?
Yeah.
And what can that maybe tell us about social media dynamics, about advocacy itself, and honestly, how outrage just seems to work as a kind of currency all day? Okay,
so let's start right at the beginning. Karen Deakmire's origin story. She was born in the 1960s, and she actually got onto social media quite late in life, age 50, back in 2020, on TikTok.
Which is interesting in itself.
It is. She'd already spent decades as an elementary school English teacher up in Quebec, Canada. Lived most of her life, you could say, in quiet obscurity.
Right.
But here's the crucial thing. Long before she even touched a smartphone, Katie had these really deeply entrenched beliefs already formed.
Yeah.
About veganism, religion, education.
So these weren't new ideas she suddenly discovered for TikTok?
Not at all. These were core to who she was. And her initial approach on TikTok was, almost deceptively simple. Ukulele in hand.
Can't forget the ukulele.
Never. And her rescue dog, Bella, often right there with her. She'd post these little musical pleas for veganism, but then mix them with these really direct confrontations about eating meat.
Such a strange mix.
It is. There's this really stark contrast, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
Between that almost childlike presentation, the singing, the simple messages, very elementary school teacher, and the often really inflammatory stuff she was actually saying.
Absolutely. It was a fascinating blend. And her initial explosion in popularity on TikTok, she hit like 1.7 million followers by late 2020, wasn't necessarily, it wasn't just supporters.
Right. That number included a lot of critics.
A lot of critics. And just bewildered onlookers, frankly. Her whole late-in-life pivot to content creation turned out to be this volatile mixture, deep conviction on one side, but also a surprising, maybe naivete about internet culture.
Yeah, she didn't seem to grasp the dynamics at first.
No. And what started as, relatively simple advocacy, it just morphed so quickly into something way more polarizing. It rapidly expanded into really controversial areas, religion, sexuality, race relations, and then increasingly very personal attacks.
So, okay, she's building this following, partly critics, partly confused people. But then January 2021 happens, and she makes this calculated decision, it seems, that really changes everything. She targets Gordon Ramsay.
The Gordon Ramsay.
The Michelin-starred chef. Huge TikTok presence, known for being fiery, funny. Why him? Was it just strategy? Did she genuinely think he was the key?
I think it was probably a potent mix, Strategically, Ramsay offered this enormous, ready-made platform, huge audience.
Massive.
But I think for Katie, he also represented the absolute antithesis of everything she believed in. Someone not just eating meat, but actively profiting from it, building a career on it.
The thing she hated most.
Exactly. And that, I suspect, fueled her conviction, which then just kind of tipped over into outright provocation.
And she kicked it off with a video explaining to him, actually pretty calmly at first, that animals weren't food from her perspective. She said, and this is a quote, "Food is something that you get out of the ground or you take it from a tree. Animals are alive. Chickens and cows, sheep, these things are not actually food."
Which, is a clear statement of her position.
Yeah, and to be fair, it was a decent point put across calmly, logically,
right.
Maybe even persuasively for some. But then things started to go downhill. Fast.
That's right, because it became pretty clear pretty quickly that the calm, logical approach, that was kind of the only rational point she had in this exchange.
Right.
As her, resentment towards Ramsay grew, her criticisms just got more and more irrational, absurd even. She escalated the rhetoric like crazy, calling him the devil.
The devil.
Yeah, a vegan phobic and an animal bully. She questioned his parenting skills, accused him of speciesism, and then equated that directly to racism, homophobia, ableism.
Wow, just throwing everything out there.
Pretty much.
But what maybe Katie didn't count on was just how incredibly savvy Ramsay is about internet culture.
No, he totally is.
Instead of getting mad, he posts this video, right?
Yeah.
Enthusiastically biting into what looks like a vegetable. Before revealing, nope, it's a beef burger, all while calling her a vegan donut.
Which was kind of brilliant in internet terms.
Totally. That jab got millions of views.
Yeah.
And it just positioned Ramsay as completely in on the joke.
It's amazing how quickly that initial, almost reasonable approach she took just evaporated. Gone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What started as, a potentially debatable point just became something else entirely.
Mm-hmm.
And Ramsay's response, genius, completely disarmed her.
Millions of views. He totally owned it. But
Yeah.
she wasn't deterred, was she? Katie just doubled down relentlessly.
Oh, yeah.
Released an ode to Gordon Ramsay poem, condemning his choices even more, comparing his meat eating to World War II atrocities.
Which is a comparison. It's a comparison. And when that didn't work, she even tried to hit his wallet. Went after Silk Milk Company, asking why they'd pay someone who pays people to rape, torture, and murder animals.
The outcome for Ramsay was, well, mostly positive. He put together those videos from farmers supporting him. His humorous take limited any real damage.
Right.
But for Katie, the whole saga massively boosted her follower count, and it cemented her place in internet culture. But it also set that really clear pattern, didn't it?
Absolutely. Target a celebrity.
Escalate to extreme rhetoric.
And then claim victimhood when there's pushback.
Exactly. That was the moment I think she really shifted from maybe a passionate advocate to, well, a calculated provocateur. It's almost like she figured out, hey, the platforms reward this kind of controversy, regardless of the original message.
That's such a key point. Outrage is currency. So the platform itself almost shaped her behavior, rewarding the shocking stuff over the persuasive.
Fast. Okay, so riding that wave, who was next after Ramsay? Well, then she turned her sights on maybe an even unlikelier target, Jimmy Donaldson.
MrBeast.
MrBeast, wow. I mean, he's built this huge empire on, crazy philanthropy, feeding entire towns, giving away millions. Why him? What was the angle there?
It really seemed to be just about visibility again. He did a couple of videos, one trying a giant pizza, another promoting a dairy company.
And that was enough.
That was apparently enough. Katie saw her opening. She attacked his donations, saying things like innocent chickens who were murdered. Nothing that he did in that equation was good.
Attacking philanthropy, that's bold.
It is.
And unlike Ramsay's playful jab, MrBeast just stayed silent, which I bet just drove Katie nuts.
Precisely. His silence just seemed to fuel her fire. She escalated again, calling him a murderer, demanding he only promote vegan foods.
Right.
And the commentary channels jumped all over it, pointing out the irony of her attacking this huge philanthropist while she, didn't have a similar record of giving.
Yeah, that contrast is pretty stark. It really highlighted that her main motivation seemed to be attention, not really effective advocacy.
So this really cemented that perception, didn't it? That she was working off this simple formula, find the biggest name, make the most outrageous claim possible, and then just harvest the reaction for growth.
Yeah. Pretty much.
And it raises that bigger point, too. This kind of controversy doesn't exist in a vacuum. Her antics literally spawned a whole secondary industry of creators just reacting to her.
Exactly. Her virality wasn't just her own videos, it was the reaction to them. This whole ecosystem of commentary channels popped up, analyzing, criticizing, often just straight up mocking her increasingly bizarre statements.
We saw specific ones like August the Duck. He did these quite calm breakdowns of her logical inconsistencies, though he eventually called for her deplatforming after that really disturbing video, the one titled Psychotic Aunt Rob's Baby of Her Vegan Virginity.
Yeah, that one was rough.
And then you had Ben of the Week taking a more comedic route, elaborate skits, and then that absolutely wild 18 million view collaboration, Jester's Privilege, where he claimed he spent a whole day with her.
Which just exposed her to whole new audiences, right? People who maybe hadn't seen her directly before.
Exactly.
And Oompa, with his green screen, creating the whole vegan teacher cinematic universe. Just compilations of her strangest moments, painting this picture of, escalating extremism.
Right. And Glider Guy, remember him? He had 37 videos criticizing her.
Yeah, a whole series.
But he eventually stopped, saying he didn't want to fuel her behavior anymore, especially after she flat out accused him of being racist.
So this whole reaction content thing, it was a real double-edged sword for Katie, wasn't it?
Totally. On one hand, massive reach expansion, new audiences way beyond just TikTok. But on the other, she completely lost control of the narrative. Her most extreme statements getting clipped, remixed, saved forever by creators with way bigger platforms.
So she got the attention but lost the agency over her own story. And what became really clear was how symbiotic it was. She needed them to.
Right. When TikTok started restricting her, shadow banning her,
those commentary channels became essential for her to even stay relevant online. It's such a fascinating dynamic you see with these viral figures, isn't it?
Yeah.
How does this kind of problematic content get amplified and going?
It's like the outrage cycle feeds itself, and then everyone else jumps on board to capitalize.
Yeah.
Okay, so While those earlier Feud, Ramsay, MrBeast, you can maybe frame them as calculated visibility grabs. Her fixation on Call Me Chris, the Canadian TikTok comedian Chris Collins, that felt different, more unsettling.
Yeah. Definitely.
Chris had this huge following for sketch comedy, relatable stuff, nothing to do with animal rights at all.
Yeah, no connection.
Yet something about her just seemed to trigger this obsessive thing in Katie. What started as the usual vegan teacher commentary just turned into this persistent pattern that loads of viewers found genuinely disturbing.
It went beyond advocacy, didn't it? It became really personal, intrusive, like Katie literally grading Chris's comedy videos.
Yeah. And Chris initially responded with, lighthearted, witty stuff. She even pointed out Katie's hypocrisy that the Crayola marker Katie was using to lecture her actually contained animal fat.
Ouch. Good point, though.
Right. But instead of backing off, Katie just intensified her focus.
And then it took that really dark turn when Chris shared a very serious story about a past assault. Instead of just basic human empathy, Katie made a response video essentially dismissing Chris's trauma, implying that because she ate animal products, she had no right to complain about being violated.
That's horrifying.
It really. The reaction online was intense, people calling for lawsuits, seriously questioning Katie's sanity. And the Call Me Chris thing went on for so long. Katie kept targeting her relentlessly, even after Chris got married. Chris eventually just seemed exhausted by it all.
Just draining. And if that wasn't crossing enough lines, early 2025, her comments after Pope Francis died, those became some of her most universally condemned videos.
Oh, yeah. The timing was wow.
Just 3 days after he passed, while the Catholic world is still mourning, she uploads videos claiming he deserved to go to hell for not promoting veganism.
Called him a terrible example of manhood.
Said he blessed using animals for food, so no forgiveness possible. The shock at the timing, the tone, it must have been huge.
It absolutely was. Attacking this beloved global figure mere days after his death, that crossed a line that went way beyond politics or ideology. Even hardcore vegans and atheists were appalled.
Right.
That attack just seemed purely designed to generate outrage. There was no pathway there to actually advancing veganism. And that's when you saw longtime vegan activists formally disavowing her and her method.
It really felt like a point of no return for many. And it didn't stop there, did it? Her controversial comments just kept coming, targeting minority groups, sensitive topics.
No, it was a pattern. Anna, the YouTuber, called out Katie's comments that came across as racist and homophobic. Anna just methodically dismantled her arguments, pointing out the deflection tactics Katie used.
Then Ethan Trace, she hit him with this incredibly graphic description of turkey insemination, called him a disgrace, and then falsely accused him of being a pedophile.
Which is just defamation.
Totally. And Trace's response was powerful because it just laid out her ban history, this long list of offensive statements she'd made, mocking religious people, twisting texts, saying non-vegan kids get eternal damnation, the Holocaust and Auschwitz comparisons,
ridiculing disabled people, mocking the LGBTQ plus community.
Even inciting death threats, apparently.
A long list.
And she used George Floyd's death, remember, to criticize a black man for not being vegan.
Yeah.
Adding this really uncomfortable racial layer.
Yeah, that was deeply problematic. And comparing Jewish people to slaughter pigs given Jewish dietary laws, that's despicable.
Truly awful. And then claiming the minority flag also includes vegans and declaring herself the self-imposed leader of the LGBTQ community.
The audacity is something else.
But then came what, for many, was just unthinkable. She targeted a baby, a 4-month-old infant. Isaac Butterfield's son, Adaka. She made a video directly addressing the baby, claiming he had a right to maintain his vegan virginity, accusing his parents of feeding him corpses. I mean, it's hard to even process the mindset behind that.
Butterfield's response was really effective, I thought. He brought up the science, cited the CDC on vitamin B12 deficiency, how critical it is for brain development, how it's mainly in animal products, and how deficiency can cause permanent brain damage in infants.
A very serious counterpoint.
And he nailed the hypocrisy, too, pointing out Katie fed her own dog, Bella, a vegan diet since 2017, even though dogs are natural omnivores needing animal proteins.
Right.
That incident, targeting an infant, it really marked a significant escalation. It cemented her reputation as someone whose zealotry had just completely clouded her judgment, targeting someone who couldn't possibly even understand, let alone respond.
It's just, yeah. Now, amidst all this hostility and controversy, there was one really weird anomaly, an unexpected ally. PewDiePie.
Ah, yes, PewDiePie.
He was the strange exception to her usual pattern of just attacking everyone. Somehow, PewDiePie managed to make that vegan teacher actually like him. For a bit, anyway.
It was such a bizarre situation.
Totally bizarre. It started with this misunderstanding. PewDiePie did a video reacting to this like Nat Geo-style satire documentary about how fish is made.
Right, clearly satire.
But Katie only watched the first 90 seconds or something, saw a vegan burger in the thumbnail, and just completely mistook his satire for genuine vegan concern.
So she jumps on it.
Immediately. Grabs the ukulele, makes her own reaction video, giving him check marks on this imaginary report card for his supposed vegan choices.
And then there was that moment, that almost humorous Freudian slip where she called him cutie instead of PewDiePie.
Yeah. PewDiePie himself pointed it out. It was weirdly humanizing for a second, wasn't it? Like maybe suggesting some kind of celebrity admiration under all the militant stuff?
A tiny crack in the facade, maybe?
Maybe. But in the end, PewDiePie made it very clear. I'm not vegan. I'm not interested in becoming vegan.
Which just completely demolished the fantasy narrative she'd built up.
Totally. Proved that even her one supposed ally among creators was, well, not an ally at all.
Yeah, that bubble burst pretty quick.
So, okay, beyond these individual feuds with celebrities and creators, Katie's actions also really shone a light on some significant internal divides within the vegan community itself.
That's a really important point. It wasn't just non-vegans reacting negatively.
Exactly. Take her debate with Raleigh Link about dog nutrition.
Right. Katie had this absolute stance. Feeding animal products to dogs is a full stop. But Raleigh Link countered, saying, look, dogs are scavenging carnivores. Their digestive systems are almost identical to wolves, forcing vegan diets on them. That could be a form of animal abuse.
A completely different perspective.
And Raleigh represents that more incremental approach to advocacy, focused on harm reduction, acknowledging that impossible purity isn't really practical in the real world. It's a huge contrast to Katie's all-or-nothing viewpoint, a whole different philosophy of how change happens.
Then you had her attacks on Dr. Mike, the medical professional.
Yeah, demanding he lose his license because he didn't advocate strict veganism for all patients.
Even accusing his parents of shoving dead bodies down their throats. Wow.
And Dr. Mike's actual experience completely contradicted her claim. He documented his own 30-day vegan trial.
Right, I remember that.
Yeah, he reported persistent bloating and gas, trouble getting enough calories, losing motivation for exercise. So from his evidence-based medical standpoint, he recommends more of a plant-focused diet, not necessarily strictly vegan for everyone.
Yeah.
And always consult with healthcare pros.
Which sounds reasonable.
It's reasonable, nuanced medical advice, but that stood in stark contrast to Katie's very rigid moral binary, which just dismissed any nuance or actual medical experience.
And we saw that dismissal again with Nikocado Avocado, the former vegan who talked about his health declining on a plant-based diet fatigue, malnutrition.
And Katie's response, just total invalidation. A true vegan, you are a vegan forever, completely ignoring his lived negative health experience.
So it really highlights this conflict within veganism itself.
Absolutely. While sure, some vegans might support her methods or her visibility. Many others, you see it all over subreddits, comment sections, they vehemently denounce her. They argue her confrontational tactics just alienate potential allies, reinforce those negative stereotypes about vegans being militant or unreasonable.
Yeah, the angry vegan stereotype.
Exactly. And they emphasize that effective advocacy, lasting advocacy, really needs compassion for humans as well as for animals, something Katie often seemed to forget in her approach.
So as we wrap up this deep dive on that vegan teacher, we're definitely left with this really complex figure, aren't we?
No easy answers here.
Not at all. On one hand, you can't deny she succeeded in sparking conversations about animal ethics that reached way beyond the usual vegan circles. She forced mainstream culture to confront some really uncomfortable questions about animal treatment that, let's be honest, many people would rather just ignore.
That's true. She got the topic out there. However, the way she chose to ignite those conversations, well, it came at a really steep cost.
Definitely.
Her reliance on that extreme rhetoric, those inflammatory comparisons to like historical atrocities, her habit of just dismissing any criticism, those became her defining features.
Yeah, that's what people remember.
And those tactics didn't just alienate skeptics, they fractured her own movement. As the backlash grew, she ended up banned from multiple platforms, publicly condemned by vegans and non-vegans alike.
So it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? While maybe the truth doesn't always need to be screamed to be heard, when the delivery itself becomes dehumanized, what actually happens to the message?
Does it get lost? Does it backfire?
Exactly. And is attention really success? If it comes at the expense of the very cause you claim you're trying to serve, it leaves you thinking. What stands out most to you from this whole deep dive?